So we are recording now, and these webinars, after each webinar is over, you're sent an email from TESOL with the link to each webinar so that you can review it if you want. The webinars previously were stored on the announcements tab in the Canvas platform. And the announcements tab does not show up on my Canvas platform, unfortunately. I'll show you where it should be. So you're able to see my Canvas platform now.
Yes.
And here on the left-hand side, in this menu bar, normally there's an announcements tab just here above the modules tab. So hopefully on your Canvas platform, you see an announcements tab. You go inside the announcements tab and you can see historical recordings of previous webinars. But recently, TESOL set up a YouTube channel, and they're sharing the webinars as recorded items on this YouTube channel. So anyway, you are able to review the recordings should you want to. So to get things started off today, my name is Daniel Miller. I'm one of the instructors with TESOL Canada, and I will be running the webinar today, and then in the future, I'll be doing the Monday webinars. And you'll have 2 or 3 other instructors doing some webinars along the way. Ms. Masagi from Iran does the webinars on Saturdays. She presents those, and we have another lady from Brazil, Anna Patricia, who does some of the webinars along the way on certain topics. And Dr. Valley will come in at some point and do a couple of the webinars for you as well. So to get things started off today, this is an introductory webinar for you to get you started on your Canvas platform and to give you a bit of instruction about how to use the Canvas platform, as well as to start into the actual methodologies and the material. So these webinars are designed as supplementary to the self-study course that you're doing. So depending on whether you're in the foundation level or the advanced level or the diploma level, this self-paced study course is designed to be about 3 months long for foundation and approximately 4 to 5 months for the advanced, and to be completed within 6 months for the diploma program. So each of the advanced and diploma certificates has more requirements to it than the foundation level. So depending on which level you're in, there are differences. Everybody does all the foundation material. So all levels cover all the foundation level material, and then advanced adds a couple of modules, and diploma adds a couple more modules. So it's designed that way so that you can gauge how long you need to spend on a weekly basis working on the self-study modules in the Canvas platform. And then these webinars come along twice a week on Mondays and Saturdays. We're only doing Tuesday because yesterday was a national holiday in Canada. So that's why Tuesday, but normally it's Monday and Saturday that we do the webinars to supplement your self-study program. Now, the reason I was asking a few minutes ago if any of you were teaching or have teaching experience, and thank you again to those of you who have turned your cameras on. I always appreciate the participants turning their cameras on. It's much nicer than looking at black squares on my TV screen. It makes me feel like I'm actually connecting to real people rather than a black square with a name in it. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. The reason I was asking about your teaching experience is because there is a teaching requirement, a practicum requirement, a certain number of hours that goes along with each of the advanced, the foundation advanced and diploma certificates. So if you have teaching experience that you can validate and you can provide evidence of that teaching experience, you should send that as a PDF document or send the proof of your teaching experience to Simon Baker, and I'll type his email address in the chat box. Just give me a second. I can't talk and type at the same time. I end up typing words that don't exist. So that is Simon Baker's email address. And if you have teaching experience and you can provide evidence of it, proof of it through PDFs or Selena, in your case, because you've been doing it more as a self-employed situation where you've been doing the teaching connected to a publisher. Do you have a website connected to your teaching? Perhaps you can send them the link, the website link, and send them any documentation that you might have from the publishers related to the curriculum that you've been teaching.
Sure.
Anything that proves that you have years of teaching experience, because if you can prove that you have years of teaching experience, you might not be required to do the practicum part to get your certificate.
Okay.
So I have a Bachelor of Education degree. I taught secondary school in Ontario for a number of years. I taught at a university in Toronto for several years. I have been teaching for the past 50 years. I started teaching piano when I was 11 years old. So I've got all kinds of documentation of past teaching experience. So I was not required to do the practicum. And the practicum consists of you doing teaching. It can be online or in person, but practical teaching experience is required in order for you to get your certificate. So I would suggest that Moza Balatan and Selena and Dorothy, I would suggest that you have teaching experience which you can probably justify and validate. And by sending PDFs to Simon Baker, you very likely will be excused from doing the practicum.
Mm-hmm.
That's hundreds of hours.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So yes, Moza Balatan, you've got a question.
Yes, so when you say documentation, so you mean letters from the organization, from the teaching organization stating that you were teaching there with the hours, or is it your certification? What sort of documents? I just want to have a fair idea of the sort of documents to prove that you have teaching experience.
Both of those are very good to send. So if you have a teaching certificate or a teaching degree, send a photograph of that, as well as any letters that you do have from the institutions where you were teaching. Send as much information as you can turn into a PDF or a photograph to validate your teaching experience.
Thank you.
The more evidence they have, the easier it is for them to say, oh, all right, this person does not need to do the practicum.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Mehran, welcome to the session today. And thank you again, ladies, for turning your cameras on. So are there any questions about the teaching practicum, the certification that is required, or the documentation that you need to send to offer proof of your teaching background? Any questions connected to that point? No, good to go on that?
No.
Fair enough. So I absolutely encourage everybody to ask questions anytime throughout a webinar. If you have a question about anything as we go along, by all means, interrupt me. I do not think that is being rude. I want to make sure that I address your questions when you have them. And every question that is asked is a valid question. And many questions that each of you have individually are questions other people are wondering about as well. So by all means, if you have a question, raise your hand with the, you know, the little symbol thing, this thing. So whatever that's called, that emoji or whatever it's called, you know, raise your hand if you have a question. And or just jump in and say, excuse me, I have a question, and I'll answer them right on the spot. Okay? So every question is welcome whenever you have a question. Now we're going to go to a PowerPoint. I'm going to talk about the Canvas platform and just a few details related to the usage of it for your benefit. And I'll turn it into a full PowerPoint slideshow here in just a moment. There we go. Now you can see it better. So this is an introduction to the advanced TESOL platform that you have, that you're working with and going through the modules on it. When you log in, the email that you use to log into Canvas, make sure it's the same personal email that you used when you signed up for the TESOL course. Because when Simon Baker registers you on the Canvas platform, he uses the email address that you have been corresponding to him with. If you try to sign in with a different email address, Canvas won't find you. So always use the same email address with everything that you do with TESOL that you started with. You know, don't change your email address partway through the course unless it's absolutely necessary. And if for some reason you do need to change your email address, then you need to let Simon Baker know what the new email address is, because then he will adjust it on the Canvas platform. All right, so that's a crucial point. Your username is your email, create your own password, and then review the Canvas homepage and read through it thoroughly. Once you begin the modules, work through them consecutively. Don't jump ahead in the modules. If you see something that looks interesting further down the page, don't jump to it and keep going from there, because if you do not complete each quiz all the way along in the modules, then you will very likely be locked out of future modules. The Canvas platform tracks two things in each of your accounts. It tracks the number of hours, the amount of time that you spend on the Canvas platform, and it tracks all of the quizzes that you complete. So don't jump over any quizzes. Don't skip over any of them. You might think, oh, I know this material, I don't need to do the quiz. Yes, you do need to do the quiz, because you must do the quiz in order to ensure that you have access to all of the future modules down through the course. All right. If you cannot access a module or a quiz, and you know you've completed everything up to that point, or any other administrative or technical questions, then that's the email address to send. I think I gave you the wrong email address for Simon Baker. I did. It's not TESOLcanada.com, it's TESOLcanada.org. Sorry about that. So Simon Baker is info@TESOLcanada.org, not .com. Sorry about that. I'm so used to typing .com on email addresses that I just did it automatically. So this is Simon Baker's email address right here. Oh, I better share the screen if I'm trying to point something out to you. There we go. This is Simon Baker's email address, info@tesolcanada.org. So he is for administrative questions or any problems you have with Canvas, email him. If you have questions about the content of the course or questions about assignments, you can email me. I'll give you my email address in a moment after I stop sharing screen. I can't type in the chat box when I'm sharing the screen. We'll take a look at the Canvas website in just a moment. And are you all signed into Canvas? You're all logged into Canvas now, and you've been looking through it. You started the modules?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, I haven't started the modules, but I already signed up.
Good. So that's the end of that short presentation about the Canvas platform. Any questions about the Canvas platform?
No.
No,
You're good to go?
good.
All right, I'm going to give you my email address. And that is correct. That is the correct address. I checked it carefully as I was typing it. So if you have any questions about the content of the course or any of the assignments, feel free to send me an email. And I'm pretty quick at getting back to you within a day or so at the very latest. I check this email several times every day. So don't hesitate to send me an email. Let's have a quick peek at the Canvas platform now. So in the Canvas platform, this is the home page that I suggested that you should read through this. You should read through all of this information. It's very good for you to have the background on the course and the background of what's been happening for the last couple of years. And then when you go to the modules tab, right here inside TESOL resources, there are two PDFs especially. There are lots of resource books in here, booklets and material, but there are two specifically that I recommend that you download as a PDF and save it on your computer. The TESOL manual and the TESOL Canada handbook. Oh, it'll be updated soon. So watch for that to be updated. So the TESOL Canada handbook and the TESOL manual are two manuals, two PDF documents that I found particularly helpful in the studying of this course. I didn't realize the TESOL Canada handbook was being updated at this point, but it'll be back soon. Okay, so go to your TESOL resources tab here to find those PDF documents and download them for reference, okay? And then you get into the methodologies, and you have these, the different material that is provided to you. And then you've got these quizzes. Make sure you complete every quiz all the way along as you go through the platform. Do every quiz. These are what are necessary for you to do in order to unlock future modules. Because if you skip some of the quizzes, then Canvas will not unlock some of the future modules for you. Now, I mentioned don't skip ahead when you're in the modules, don't skip ahead. So having said that, we're going to skip ahead right now, just briefly. But this is the only spot where I really want you to skip ahead. You should go to the second language acquisition tab. And in this tab, this is an excellent video by Noam Chomsky. It's a little over an hour long, but it's absolutely fascinating about second language acquisition. And I would strongly recommend that you should listen to that video at some point in time. You can wait until you get to it in the second language acquisition module, or you can have a listen to it as you're coming here. But the reason we jumped ahead is because your first essay assignment is right here under second language acquisition. This is the only spot that you will see this essay assignment, which is called the foundation essay. So this is, you're asked to write between 2 to 5 pages, and that's typed. And you're asked to select one of these 8 topics that are given to you here. And you just write a responsive essay to these topics and describe what you think is the best way to answer the particular question. So you might be describing a situation, or you might be discussing a particular topic that is suggested. But these are your 8 topics to choose in. Yes, Dorothy, you raised your hand. Yes.
Yes. For this essay, does it need to be like academic writing, have proper quotes, and the structure of academic essay?
Well, this foundation essay, it definitely can be in the style of an academic essay. So as you write this essay, if you are using quotes from other people, then definitely use footnotes or in-text quotation sources, and definitely put a bibliography at the end of the essay. But if the style of your essay is just offering your opinion and offering what you believe to be the answer to the question, and you're not quoting anybody else, then you don't need to worry about the bibliography.
Okay. So we can just simply talk about my experience in learning language and don't have to introduce any theory and do any quote.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if you do introduce some theory, then that's when you do need to use proper references and bibliography.
Okay.
Okay.
I see.
Very good question. You're welcome. Very good question. Any other questions about this foundation essay?
Just a quick.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can't see you, but we can hear
Sorry.
you.
If I want to raise my hand and I ask a question, how does it work? I don't know. Which option should I choose?
At the bottom of the screen, are you on your phone or a laptop?
No, phone.
Okay, I'm not sure how it shows on the phone. On the computer, it shows at the bottom, there's it says raise hand, but I don't know what it looks like on the phone. I've never done it on a phone.
Okay.
But if you have a question, Mayday, you can just say that you've got a question and we can talk about it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions related about, yes, Selena?
Yes, I just have a question in terms of the timing, just to make sure, and I like to kind of plan ahead. You said we could skip towards this exercise, to this activity. So at what point can we go and do and work on this?
Well, whenever I introduce an assignment to you and talk about assignment, you should consider the due date as 2 weeks later.
Okay.
So you should begin working on, jump to the second language acquisition under modules. Under modules, jump to second language acquisition right away,
I
so
see.
that you can read about this foundation essay and begin this assignment. Because you should hand this essay it. You should hand the essay in. You email it to info@tesolcanada.org. You emailed it to Simon Baker, and you should email that to him within a couple weeks.
Perfect. That's exactly. So if I, the way I work, if I know I have my deadlines clear, I would be able to organize myself better.
Yeah, perfect. I totally agree. So every assignment, you should assume the due date of each assignment is 2 weeks after I've introduced it to you,
Perfect. Thank you.
or whoever introduces it to you,
Mhm.
because other instructors will introduce other assignments. Yes, Dorothy.
Yes, I see the due date for this one is, it says end of December or I saw it somewhere. I think it's December.
No, I don't know. I don't know what due date you would have been looking at or where you would have seen that.
In assignments, if you go to the left, there's one tab says assignment. Yeah, and there's
First
11
essay due December 1st.
Yeah, is that the right date?
Yes.
That's an old date.
Oh,
In the assignments tab, don't go by all of these dates that are listed, because oftentimes they don't get updated quickly. So these are old dates from previous courses.
okay. So this first essay is due in 2 weeks from today. Is that right?
Correct. Now, when I say 2 weeks, if you hand this first essay in 3 weeks, that's not a problem.
Okay.
So if you don't hand it in exactly 2 weeks from now, that's not an issue. You won't fail the course. You won't lose any marks. But if you wait and hand in this essay on December 1st, as indicated on the assignments page, then you're going to be way behind with your assignments, because you have other assignments after this that need to be handed in along the way as well.
Okay, that's good to know. And can I ask another question about this essay? I think it says for the format, we need to leave some blank space on the left for the teacher to make comments. So in the Word document, I need to leave lots of space on the left, or?
Well, leave a margin of about 1 inch on each side,
Oh,
and
okay.
that'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I just received a message in WhatsApp from Dr. Valley, and he's explaining to me that a couple of the students are doing the program for teaching Korean as a second language, or teaching Chinese as a second language, and teaching Spanish as a second language. So, Selena, are you doing the teaching Spanish,
Yes.
the TSSOL?
Yes.
Dorothy, are you doing the teaching Chinese?
Yes.
All right. So then, in that case, the theory sessions, which are these webinars, the theory sessions and the modules in Canvas are in English, but your assignments and practicum, as well as the final exams, will be in your selected languages. So Dorothy, you must write all of your essays and all of your assignments in Chinese. And Selena, you must write all of your essays and assignments in Spanish.
Including this first essay? So
Yes.
all my assignments.
Yes, that's correct, Dorothy. All your assignments, including this essay, will
Okay.
be in Chinese.
Oh,
So that means I won't be marking any of Dorothy's assignments, and I won't be marking any of Selena's assignments, because I don't speak Spanish or Chinese. So your assignments will be given to instructors who are Spanish or Mandarin speaking, and they will be marked by those people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
And Dr. Valley also said you do not need to complete the ESL English quizzes in Canvas.
Mm.
So all of those quizzes under modules, these are all English language quizzes
Mm-hmm.
that show under modules. So Dorothy and Selena, you do not need to do these English language quizzes.
Yep.
Okay.
So see, the Canvas platform does not understand that Dorothy is doing the Chinese program and Selena is doing the Spanish program. So if you bump into a problem that you're not able to access a module or part of the platform, send an email to Simon Baker and explain that you can't access it, and just remind him that you're doing, Selena would say, I'm doing the TSSOL, and
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy would say, I'm doing the TCSOL, and remind him and ask him to unlock the modules for you.
Okay.
Okay?
So if we are interested in doing those modules as well, would that be an option?
You mean if you want to do these quizzes?
Yes.
Oh, certainly. There's no problem with you going through these quizzes and doing them if you want to. That's not a problem at all. You're just not required to.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so certainly if you want to complete the quizzes, I found them quite interesting, and they're a
Yeah.
good summary of the material.
Mm-hmm. Because in that case, would it be possible to know exactly which ones do we have to do if we are only looking into the Spanish or Korean or corresponding certifications? But in that case, I don't know if the system will allow us to skip modules.
Well, you still need to go through the modules. You need to work through the modules and know the material in the modules. It's given to you in English, but
Mm-hmm.
you'll be writing your
Oh,
exam.
I see. It's just for the grammar portion.
It's just for these grammar quizzes that you do not need to
Mm,
do the
I see.
quizzes.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay.
So you can certainly, I mean, you're still required to read through the PowerPoints and get the material in the PowerPoints.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this PDF that you can work on these worksheets if you want. But it's the quiz that you can skip over.
I see. Okay.
You don't need to do these quizzes, okay?
Mm-hmm. I understand. Thank you.
And Dr.
It's
Valley also said your final exam will be written in the language you're doing the course in. So Selena, you'll write the final exam in Spanish. Dorothy, you'll write the final exam in Chinese. And who is doing the Korean, teaching Korean as a second language? Is that participant on the call today? No, maybe not. Okay. Did you have another question, Dorothy?
Oh no, sorry.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. No problem. Okay, ladies, any questions about what we just covered there?
Mm,
No.
no, thank you.
You're okay with all of that?
Yep.
All right. So who is doing the TASE and TCBE, the Teacher's Advanced Standing Evaluation. Is that any of you folks?
Not me.
No, me?
Okay. That's fine. So which program are you in? Are you in Foundation or Advanced?
I believe I signed up for the advance.
Okay. Is in
Diploma in TESOL.
okay, you're doing Diploma, that's fine, that's good. I did Diploma. That's what I did as well. Is anybody on this call doing the postgraduate diploma? No, not right now on this call. That's fine.
Not sure. I need to check that.
That's fine. No worries. So if you're doing the postgraduate diploma, you have to go through the full diploma program first anyway. And that's okay. So we're going to go to another PowerPoint right now. This is the introduction to second or foreign language acquisition teaching. There are advantages of teaching second language, and they are that the homework that involves speaking tasks or listening to the radio or watching TV and reading newspaper articles, that's an advantage for students to become familiar with real second language activities. One of the best ways to learn a second language is to watch television shows in the second language, sitcom series and that type of thing. It encourages students to seek out opportunities for practice. It encourages students to seek corrective feedback from others. Have students keep a log or diary of their extra class learning. If they write down things that they do outside of the class, that will help to reinforce what they did in the class. Plan and carry out field trips. During the pandemic, I know a lot of teachers actually did field trips as virtual events. They did field trips that took students to museums and art galleries and other places, but they did it all virtually through a Zoom call or a Skype meeting or something of that nature. Plan social mixers with native English speakers. Again, I know teachers who did this type of thing during the pandemic through technical platforms such as Cisco, such as we're using. They would gather people together and have conversations and even share a meal. Do it all through Zoom or Skype or some other technical platform. But now that the pandemic is easing off a little bit, people are getting back to doing in-person social mixers. And if you include people who speak the native second language that is being learned, then that's going to help your students tremendously to have that personal interaction with a native speaker. And inviting speakers to go into classrooms. I have been the guest speaker in classroom situations, not only in person before the pandemic, but also through Zoom meetings during the pandemic. And I have a couple of invitations in the near future where I will go to student classrooms and teach a specific item, specific topic. My background at university was to study visual arts and English and medieval English and 17th century French literature. So I have an invitation to go into a grade 4 classroom at a school in Toronto in a few months where they want me to be teaching 1-point perspective to the students as part of their art curriculum. So guest speakers in a classroom are always interesting because it's good for the students to have a different voice that is bringing information to them and a different person for them to interact with. There are cultural factors to consider in the classroom, and these applications are listed here below. Discussing cross-cultural differences, emphasizing that no culture is better than another, but that cross-cultural understanding is an essential facet of learning a language. Include among your techniques particular activities or materials that illustrate the connection between language and culture. This can often be done through the art forms of a particular culture or society and connect it with the language of that culture. Visual aids and pictures are very powerful connectors to use along with words. Teach your students that cultural connotations, especially of sociolinguistic aspects of language. And screen your methods for material that may be culturally offensive. The last thing you want to do in any classroom situation is to offend somebody because you immediately alienate them. And if they are not an eager participant, then that can cause communication problems within the classroom setting. So we want to keep everybody in a comfort zone where they don't feel that they're being offended in any way. Then there's the process of acculturation. What do we mean by acculturation? Anybody? What do you think we mean by the term acculturation?
I don't know. I guess just give more emphasis or trying to give more importance to certain culture rather than other.
When you're trying to settle into a new culture, something.
Yes, that's it. When you're trying to become familiar with a new culture. So if you were to move to a new country, the process of acculturation is when you become familiar with the culture of the new country, the new society, and you're able to function within it. So you become used to the local customs, the local language, and that is the process of acculturation. Cultural preservation. What do we mean by that?
Trying to keep the culture to make sure that it doesn't die, doesn't become obsolete.
Yes, so if you do move to a new country or you move to a different society, you preserve your original cultural heritage to keep it alive so it doesn't die out. That's exactly right. Yeah, good. There are expectations. We all have expectations. Before you came onto the webinar today, I'm sure you had expectations of what it was going to be like. Your expectations may turn out to be correct or maybe not, but expectations that we have in a classroom, teachers have expectations and students have expectations. Oftentimes, teachers are expected to have all the answers. However, teachers are allowed to say, I don't know, or I made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you don't know the answer to a question or that you've made a mistake with some material you've given. The students would much prefer that you're honest about it and that you find out what the correct answer is than to give them an incorrect answer and just leave it hanging out there.
Mhm.
The concept of suppressing emotions. In many societies, the suppression of emotions by not only teachers but also students is somewhat expected. However, we believe that people, teachers and students, are authorized to express emotions. So what this means is that it's quite all right for me to say, good job with that answer, or yes, that's a great answer. Or if I say, thank you for your avid participation in today's webinar, that type of emotion is what I'm talking about. It's not appropriate for me to come into these webinars and start crying on the camera because my fish died or something like that. We have to keep it appropriate, but we are allowed to express emotions, and students as well. So maybe the students are upset about something, or they're upset about a mark that they got from you. It's healthy for the students to say that they're upset about that mark, and could you please talk to them about it and explain what happened, and that's an honest expression of emotion. So that's fine. Interpreting intellectual disagreement as personal disloyalty. Well, that doesn't need to be the case at all, because we interpret differences as an interesting intellectual exercise. That's much more valuable. And we will not always agree on everything. But if we can agree to have a conversation and express our opinions, explain our thinking, then that's a valuable intellectual exercise. It's important to reward students for accuracy in problem solving. Reward them for innovative approaches that they bring to a problem solving process. The reward can be a verbal confirmation of success. That's quite satisfactory as a reward. You don't have to give out chocolate bars for everything as a reward for students. Students should speak in class only. Well, this in class only when called out by the teacher. Well, that's not a good idea, I don't think, because students should be encouraged to volunteer their thoughts, their ideas, and that's what I always try to do. And that's why I said a little while ago, if you have any questions, or if you have any ideas about what we're talking about, or you have an example you would like to share, by all means, jump in and give us that insight, because that's valuable for everybody. Students admire the friendliness of teachers. Now, by friendliness of the teachers, we're talking about such as you experienced today when you joined the webinar. Before we began the recording, we had a few minutes where I was just talking with you, chatting with you. I told you my name and introduced myself a little tiny bit. And it's that kind of friendliness that people appreciate. And students value that kind of interaction, that kind of friendliness from a teacher or an instructor. Teachers should never lose face. To do so also means losing the respect of students. However, teachers can admit when they are wrong and still maintain the students' respect. As I mentioned back up here in the first point, teachers are allowed to say they don't know. Excuse me. Or they're allowed to say they made a mistake. Students expect the teachers to show them the way. However, many teachers expect students to find their ways. I don't agree with either one of these. I think it has to be somewhere in the middle. I believe my role as an instructor, as a teacher, is to guide you through the Canvas platform and guide you through these webinars, offer you suggestions for how to do things and give you some insights into course material and into assignments to the extent that I can. But I'm certainly not going to do the whole process for you. I'm not going to give you I'm not going to spoon feed you and give you every detail. I'll give you pointers. I might answer your question with a question to cause you to think about it more and discover the answer on yourself. But neither do I expect you just to figure it out all on your own. And I don't believe in throwing you into the Canvas platform and say, good luck, see you at the exam. I don't believe in that either. And that's why we do these webinars, to offer you supplementary information and also the opportunity for you to interact with me, to ask questions for clarification. Because I believe clarity brings confidence. Any questions or comments about this, folks? Any thoughts?
I don't know. I think it's very interesting. The last point, the teachers are always, or most of the times, expected to have all the answers, and it's not necessarily that way, right? It's very interesting also to see what the students have to say, and often they will bring good ideas to the table, right? So
Yes, that's exactly right. I totally agree. And
yes.
I will guarantee you ladies one thing. I do not have all the answers to all the questions. I absolutely guarantee that's the case.
Mm.
But if I don't have the answer, then I probably know where we can go to find it out. See, in this modern day of technology, where we have access to all knowledge through the internet and through our technology, it's not possible for everybody to have all the answers. And I believe the key is to know how to find answers and where to go and how to figure it out. That's the important piece of the equation, in my opinion.
Yes.
Not knowing everything, because I guarantee I don't know everything. Now we're going to begin looking at the actual methodologies. And as you begin reading through the modules, you'll come to the first and second language acquisition modules after going through several days of grammar quizzes. So you do 4 days of grammar quizzes and then you come to the modules, and that's fine. But here's where we begin with the oldest methodology, which is known as the grammar translation method, GTM. It focuses on structure and vocabulary, reading and writing. There's no speaking or listening involved with grammar translation method. It was the style of learning a new language that was used over thousands of years by scribes in different cultures who would copy texts in another language just to learn the language, how to read it and write it. Speaking it was not considered to be a necessity. This was all about the scholarly approach of reading and writing. So grammar translation method. And it is still used in some areas, in some institutions around the globe, because it's the easiest methodology to apply to a classroom situation. Very easy for a teacher with little or no training to put together exercises, written exercises of grammatical structure with verbs and tenses and that kind of thing, and have the students do it. And it's very easy to mark because it's just a right or wrong answer coming back. It's also known as the classical method or the grammar method. So a couple of similar different names, but grammar translation method was in place for thousands of years. Then in the late 1800s, the direct method was developed. The direct method is very naturalistic, and the direct method is really the method that children automatically use to learn their first language. How did you learn your first language? Think back to when you were 3 or 4 months old, 7 or 8 months old. Can you remember when you were 7 or 8 months old?
Not really.
I can't either, but we can imagine it for a moment, you know. When I was, I mean, I know what I was doing when I was a year old because my parents took all kinds of photographs. So I have a photograph album. And one of the most memorable things I did when I was a year old was they had me in my stroller and I stood up on the little platform at the front of the stroller. I flipped it over and the handle of the stroller landed on my arm and broke my left wrist when I was just a year old. My parents have photographs of me limping around, holding my left wrist up and crawling around on my knees and my other hand. They've got photographs of me because it was a few days before they realized I'd broken my arm. So memorable occasions. But how did we learn our first language? Anybody, how did you learn your first language? What process did you go through? I know you did not sit down with pages of written exercises and your crayons and fill in answers on grammar pages. I know you didn't do that. How did you learn to speak your first language?
I think from here, first off, from hearing it being spoken all the time, that's the first thing, is the first kind of language I was exposed to.
Exactly. Yes. So who were you listening to? That's exactly right, Moza Batalitan. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Moza Bolatan?
Yes, but you can call, everybody calls me Mosh for short.
Oh, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Mosh. Yeah, so who were you listening to, Mosh?
As in my parents and people around me
Exactly.
speaking that language.
Exactly. So listening was an absolutely essential part of the learning process for your first language, for all of us. It was listening and hearing what was said around us. And then what did we do in our turn? We heard things that were being said around us. Then what did we do?
Respond to whatever the situation was. So try to reproduce.
Reproduce. What's another word that we could use for reproduce what we heard, Selena?
Answer, to respond.
To
Well,
repeat?
To repeat.
even before repeating, there's another word, starts with the letter M.
Mimicry? Correct?
Mimicry. Yes, exactly. Mimicry.
Mm-hmm.
So even before we responded to the people around us, we had to mimic what they were saying first to learn what to say. So the listening was absolutely crucial to the learning of our first language. That's the direct method. That's the naturalistic direct method, the way children learn their first language. The conversation, the pronunciation, no grammar structure. Because when little babies start to speak, when they first put their first few words together, it's not a grammatically correct, complete sentence with all the adverbs and verbs in the right spot. It's just a group of words, and you know, they might say, "Mama run too," or "Dada run," "Dada throw ball." It could be just a selective grouping of words to get a message across about what they're thinking. That's the direct method. Well, at the time the direct method came out, there was a gentleman by the name of Charles Berlitz. And he definitely believed in the direct method and followed it very closely. But he didn't want to call it the direct method. He called it the Berlitz method. So he wanted to make sure his name went down in history, and it worked. So the Berlitz method is the same thing as the direct method. But the direct method came first, and then Charles Berlitz jumped on it and said, I want to call it the Berlitz method. So that's that. That was in the late 1800s. And that lasted for a little while, but it was not as easy a method for teachers to teach as the grammar translation method was. So it was also a bit more expensive because the direct method required smaller classes, smaller groups of students, a better pupil-teacher relationship. And so in the early 1900s, a lot of institutions returned to the grammar translation method because it was an easily functional method, and they didn't need to spend a lot of money for smaller class sizes. Because if you have small classes, that means you need to hire more teachers to cover the same number of students, and educational institutions didn't want to spend that money. So in the early part of the 20th century, the grammar translation method became popular once again. Then we come to the 1930s, and there was a major conflict, a global conflict, the World War II. And during this World War II, when the American nation became involved in World War II, all of a sudden they needed to have their military personnel learn foreign languages. The learning of foreign languages in the United States was not a common event because the United States is so large, such a huge piece of geography, and the people traveling around the United States could function just fine with English only as their language. But in the Second World War, all of a sudden, it was necessary for US military personnel to learn how to speak the foreign languages of not only allies, but also of enemy nations. So the US was teaching its military personnel to speak German and French and Belgian and Swiss, and they were learning all these languages, and it was called the Army camp method, the Army method. The Army method evolved into what became known as the audiolingual method, which is focusing on pronunciation and native speaking features. It borrowed these aspects from the direct method. In audiolingual, it's based on memorization drills. There's no grammar, a lot of mimicry, focusing on correct pronunciation. So just imagine if they were teaching United States Army personnel, they were teaching them to learn and speak the German language. They were then going to send these people into Germany as spies. Those American spies, they really needed to learn how to speak German in a very natural sounding way. Otherwise, it would mean their death. They would be discovered as spies if they didn't speak it in a very natural sounding way. So mimicry was all focusing on the correct pronunciation of native speaking features of the language being learned. That's the audiolingual method. Very similar to other systems of learning second languages that focus on mimicry and memorizing words and memorizing sentences, such as the Rosetta Stone program. You may have heard that. Might have heard about that or other programs. You can buy the program, you put a disc into a DVD player, a CD player, you listen to the disc, you repeat what is on the disc, and you learn the language that way. That's the Rosetta Stone program. And that was fine. That was in the 1930s, 1940s, and that stayed around for a little while. Then we get up to 1970s, and in the United Kingdom, in 1970, there was a notional functional syllabus, NFS, notional functional syllabus. that was based on functional communication. But this was limited and was really just for basic conversation. So what we're talking about functions here, we're talking about two levels of functions, one level being abstract functions, such as the function of the universe or outer space or abstract concepts like that. That was one set of functions. Another set of functions is on a more useful level, everyday level. So it might be based around the functions of a topic such as the healthcare system or personal identification. So under personal identification functions, you would learn the words related to social insurance number or driver's license or passport. And you would learn the terminology for that and conversation around these functions. That's why it was quite basic conversation that occurred under the NFS methodology. Then we get into the 1980s, 1990s, and the CLT method, communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching, and this chart compares the audiolingual method, the Army method that developed in the World War II days. This chart compares the audiolingual method with the communicative language teaching method. Now, don't spend time right now copying this chart out because you will find this chart in those manuals that I suggested you download from the resource section. So you don't need to copy this out, and this chart will be shown to you in other places as well. I believe it's on the Canvas platform, if I'm not mistaken, also. So you don't need to write it down. The key things to remember about the differences is that audiolingual is looking at the structure, form, more than the meaning. It's learning the sounds or words. It's focused on drilling or mimicry, and no grammar. Communicative language teaching, the meaning is paramount. The key driver here is learning. Language learning is learning to communicate. So drilling might occur, but peripherally. And in the communicative language teaching method, any device which helps the learners is accepted, varying according to their age, interest, etc. So you might have some grammar translation method exercises if that fits the lesson plan, but in audiolingual method, no grammar. CLT, yes, if grammar exercises help to improve the communication, that's fine. I always say that the communicative language teaching takes the best items from all the previous methodologies before it and brings them together to create a methodology that allows the use of anything that improves the communication. So ALM is all about communication, but it's about native speaker-like pronunciation in the communication. With CLT, there's nothing wrong with the student maintaining an accent from their native language, their native culture. That's not a problem. In audiolingual, that's not acceptable. The use of the student's language was forbidden. But in CLT, a judicious use of the mother tongue is acceptable where feasible, and translation might be used where the students may benefit from it. So under CLT, if something helps the students learn how to communicate better, then that's great. They go for it. Under ALM, it's all about mimicry, and don't let your native accent come through in ALM. That's not acceptable. Now, in reality, when and you will be designing conversation activities, and you will be designing 4 skills lesson plans that focus on speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Those are in upcoming sessions. And I do webinars on each of those assignments before we give them to you. But in reality, when you're teaching in a classroom situation, you will be using multiple methodologies. So you won't just be using one methodology. The interesting thing that I found as an experienced teacher, I had never known about all these methodologies. My Bachelor of Education teaching degree, all my teaching experience that I have, all the teaching professional development days that I've attended over the years, I can't even count them at this point in time. But all of that time I spent in education, I had never heard of these methodologies until I studied the TESOL course a couple of years ago. This was new information to me. But what I discovered as I was learning the TESOL material is that I realized that I had been using all of these methodologies over the years. I just didn't have a name for them, and I didn't have the details of what their methodology was made up of. So if you've got teaching experience, as you are reading through the methodology modules in Canvas, I'm sure you'll notice the same thing. You'll probably think to yourself, oh, I've been doing that. I just didn't know it was called this, you know? So it's very interesting. I found that one of the most fascinating aspects of the TESOL course when I was studying it. Communicative language teaching specifics. It is a learner-centered style. It focuses on learners' needs and goals, gives some control to the student through group work, for example. That works better in a classroom situation where you can actually pull some desks together. Little tricky for me to say, all right, Selena and Dorothy, pull your desks together so you can work on this project at the same time. It's a little tough in a webinar, but you get the point. It includes the input of students that do not presuppose objectives in advance. So that allows students to have some input into how they're going to do a project or how they're going to design a project on a particular topic in your classroom. It allows for student creativity and innovation, enhances a student's sense of competence and self-worth. These are all learner-centered characteristics within the CLT methodology. Cooperative, collaborative efforts also work nicely to help students move forward their learning of many topics and many concepts, but certainly in second language learning. Interactive learning, pair work and group work. Real world contexts. What do we mean by real world contexts? Can anybody answer what do we mean by real world contexts?
Perhaps bringing some videos of real people talking, native people talking in real life situations where students can benefit from not on listening, getting more information about the culture probably, and so that will be something interesting. Or reading videos, audios, texts, all formats, I would say.
Yes, those are excellent thoughts, Selena. And so something along the lines of career videos. If you had videos where different people are talking about the careers that they are doing, that's a real world type of experience that students can benefit from.
Yes.
Good. Very good. Thank you. Any other thoughts or ideas?
connect to the culture. For example, if you are teaching English in Japan or in China, you will be using different examples or real life news or up to date stories.
Yes, that's exactly right, Dorothy. Thank you. Using real life news reports. So listening to the news in English, listening to commentary in English. Yes, those are all real world type contexts. Very good. And meaningful communication. You know, if you give students exercises of things to say, and you're just kind of making something up to have them have words to say, it's not as meaningful as a role-playing communication, for instance. So you could have a role-playing communication where one student is a customer and the other student is a store clerk, and they're role-playing buying a product from each other. And so meaningful communication. And again, you can go to YouTube and get all kinds of videos about that demonstrate the interaction between two people where somebody's buying something from somebody else in a store. Performing classroom tasks, getting the students to help run the classroom, whether that's cleaning the whiteboard off or whether it's handing out papers to other students, or you know, maybe you set up one of the students to be in charge of a certain type of task, and the other students have to go to that person to get answers about things. Classroom task participation. And practicing oral communication, having the students speaking and listening as much as possible. They're not going to learn how to speak and hear a second language effectively if all you have them do is written exercises.
Mm-hmm.
And writing to and for real audiences. How would that work? How could you do, how would you have your students writing to and for real audiences? What are some activities you could have them doing there?
To have some pen pal or chat on social media.
Excellent ideas. Yes. Yes. Any other thoughts? How about going to an online newspaper and looking in the want ads and having them write a letter to inquire about a certain item in want ads, to inquire about an apartment
Mm-hmm.
that is for rent, or to
Yes.
inquire about something, an item that is for sale. Now, even if they don't actually send these letters away, you're having them write them, you can assess them, you can mark them as a written activity, but they're writing for a real purpose. And you can have a discussion about what it is they're writing for. Any questions about these points, ladies?
Yes, I have a question in regards to the performing classroom tasks. If the class is online, what kind of task would you suggest? Like, it is, of course, depending on the age range, but specifically talking about adults class online.
That is an excellent question, Selena. And my answer is there really are not too many classroom tasks in an online situation.
Mm-hmm.
So one that comes to mind is that at the beginning of all these webinars, I write down the list of the names of all of you who are in the webinar,
Mm-hmm.
because Dr. Valley wants that for attendance. He likes to see who is attending webinars on a regular basis, because that forms part of your overall mark. So one task that I could do in an online situation such as this, I've never done it yet, and I probably won't. I could ask one of you to take attendance at the beginning of a webinar, write down all the names and send an email to me.
Mm-hmm.
I could do that, but it's pretty easy for me just to jot down your names when I'm sitting here with my paper in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, in an online situation, there really is not that much in the way of classroom tasks.
Yes, that's interesting. But
That fits.
that would be interesting to see, just to create a more engagement. I think it would be interesting to, I don't know, to think of some ideas probably in that regards.
What kind of tasks do you think there could be in an online situation?
Mm, I don't know. For instance, with kids, I think, I mean, talking about objects in general, for instance, what is around you, right? So
Yes.
count all the doors that are around you, but I'm not sure if that will count as necessarily performing classroom tasks. So that would be something maybe related to the topic we're working on.
Certainly, and taking your example of counting the doors in the room where they are, you could consider that to be an online task and have each of the kids count the doors in the room where they're sitting and compare the number of doors.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could ask, who has the most doors in the room and things like that. You could turn it into a little bit of a classroom task online.
Yes, once we as this task progress, we start guessing. Okay, what's the other person? How many doors the other person, or depending on the object, right? So it was a little bit more like a game, not necessarily a task, but
Yes.
because also it's important, I think, to have some tasks so the students feel responsible for something else rather just to not necessarily just listening.
Yes, I agree.
Mhm.
And in a real live in-person classroom situation, you could have a list of tasks, and
Mhm.
every week the student doing those tasks changes.
Yes.
So they get an opportunity to do different tasks. So one task could be, that a student could be responsible for keeping the textbooks tidy on the shelf.
Mhm.
And another student could be responsible for keeping the pencils sharpened,
Yes.
that sort of thing. Yes, Mosh.
And also, I was thinking like online, perhaps if there was like a timed activity, then each person can take turns to be the timekeeper or to kind of control the time to make sure that everyone works within time frames for the task online.
Very, very good idea. Yes, all good ideas. That's great. Yeah, good conversation around that point, Selena. Thanks for bringing it up.
No, thank you.
That was great.
Yes.
Whole language education, you might have heard the reference. It's a label that has been used to describe, I would say overused, to describe the combination of all of these items: cooperative learning, student-centered learning, focus on the community of learners, focus on the social nature of language, use of authentic natural language, meaning-centered language, and integration of the 4 skills. What are the 4 skills we're talking about? What are those 4 skills?
That'd be speaking, listening, reading, and writing, I guess.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Exactly.
For abilities.
C21 stands for 21st century. So additional 21st century methods. TPR, that is total physical response. It involves action and talk. It coordinates speech and action, helps to reduce stress, and it also reinforces the learning of language through the activity. So with TPR is particularly popular in usage with children especially, but can work at any level, age level, because TPR would be something like using the game Simon Says. Simon says, raise your right hand. Simon says, raise your left hand. So that's TPR because it involves movement as well as speech. Total physical response. Immersion creates an environment. Immersion is when a student very often will go to a different country and have a homestay, or where they're a boarder in somebody's home for a real environment experience. And so they will be a boarder in the home of a family that is native speaking in the culture they've gone to. They go to school during the day where they're speaking the second language. And then they go home in the evening where they're being a boarder and they're living in a real native speaking environment. And it absolutely enhances fluency very quickly because they're totally immersed in the second language. Lexical, focused on vocabularies, idioms, expressions, slang, local terms. A very naturalized approach, very much like the direct method. Then there's humanistic, which is casual, it's more social, with emotional priorities, and focused on personal interests of the students. The learner-centered is needs-based, has a modified syllabus based on the needs of the students, oftentimes connected to employability. What is the best way for you as a teacher to identify the needs of your students? What's the best way to identify them?
By asking them.
That's right. Yep. That's exactly it. Yep. Ask the students,
Yes.
what is your goal for being here? What do we need to cover to achieve your goal?
Mhm. And timeline. If they have a deadline, it is very important also to consider, I guess, because
That's right.
that will give it enough, enough time to prepare for that goal. Right?
That's right. Exactly. Yes. But definitely the best way is to ask them. Now, I didn't ask any of you, what is your goal for being in this class? Because I pretty much know what your goal is. It's pretty obvious because you signed up for the course.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't need to ask you. I know you're here to learn all the methodologies and learn all the theory behind the teaching of a second language to speakers of other languages. So I didn't have the need to ask for that from you.
Yes.
Other updated methods in 2020, the outcomes-based method from the University of Hong Kong. It's actually in 2017 they developed this outcomes-based method where they designed a mechanism to develop the outcome for the students. Then they created the teaching and learning environment for that to occur in. So I call it the backwards curriculum design. So you start by identifying the outcome, and you work backwards from the outcome to design the lessons and the courses of study that will lead to the outcome to achieve your goal. That's the best way of designing any curriculum or any lesson plans, in my opinion. Decide what you want to be the outcome and then work backwards. See, I've done an awful lot of curriculum design and curriculum writing over the decades, and I discovered that if I started with an idea and developed it into curriculum, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I had a real challenge to bring it down to a final outcome. Where was I going to end that curriculum? So then I realized I need to start with the outcome. I need to start at the end point and work backwards to design a curriculum that develops towards the outcome. So that was the outcomes-based methodology designed by the University of Hong Kong in 2017. You'll read about that in the modules in Canvas. And then there's the social media interactive approach. The use of social media during the pandemic, during 2020 and 2021, the use of social media skyrocketed. And the number of people on WhatsApp and Telegram and Instagram and Pinterest and all of these social media sites, the number of people grew by vast numbers during the pandemic, as did webinars and online presentations. And the skills for doing webinars and online presentations. So how many of you have presented webinars and online presentations? How many of you have done that? Yes, good. Now, did you do that before the pandemic, or was that something you started doing just during the pandemic?
Before.
You were doing it before even.
A little bit before, yes, but not much.
Yes.
As was I.
Much more after,
I did
during the
of course.
pandemic.
That's right. I did a little bit of online presentation before the pandemic, but certainly when the pandemic hit, I've done a lifetime of online presentation in the last 2 years, you know.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you feel, it's been a lifetime of online
Yeah.
presentation too. Exactly. And then there are Moocs and E-Learning, electronic learning. So I just saw a message from, I think it was from Mede. The scheduled length of the class is 1.5 hours. However, I will typically go a few minutes beyond that. So I'll probably be another 10 or maybe 15 minutes. If you have to go, you certainly can go, but we will be continuing with the class. If you're able to stay, then you certainly will not miss any of the material. But I find it very difficult to cover the material I'm required to cover in an hour and a half, because I like to encourage conversation with the participants, and that adds a little bit of time, which I think is a very valuable thing for all of us. So we'll be going for another 10 or 15 minutes, probably. Is that okay?
I'm okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we also have Moocs and E-Learning. What is MOOC? What does that stand for?
It's a kind of online course, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. Do you know what the letters of the acronym stand for? The words.
I can't remember right now.
Massive open online courses. Massive open online courses. Now you will be doing a MOOC essay and MOOC project. You'll be doing those a little bit later. Dr. Valley does a session to prepare you for that. So you will be learning more about these. And electronic learning, e-learning. There are many universities around the globe who have courses offered on on their university websites and the electronic learning. So all of these have become very popular and updated in the 2020 and 2021 and during the pandemic, and will continue to be mainstream.
Question. Sorry, in regards to the names. So nowadays there are so many names out there for online courses. So we often can see courses on demand, and e-learning. Would that be something similar?
Yes, those are similar. Yes. So an on-demand course is a course that you can begin at any time. There's no official start date. So you could have students beginning different days of the month, and they just take the course until they finish it.
I see.
But an on-demand course online is really just a subcategory of overall e-learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And MOOC is an umbrella term. Under MOOC, you have the edX university courses,
Mm-hmm.
and you have Coursera and Udemy, Thinkific and Udacity. There are many MOOC sites,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all MOOCs.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have their own brand name for the courses that they offer.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we've got the integrated social interaction, the social media courses and online study methods, just a number of different ways of putting things together. So you can have the webs, the apps. Here are your MOOC courses, online and hybrid. So what do you mean by online and hybrid? So this course, this TESOL course, this is a hybrid course.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hybrid because part of it is through webinars like this, and part of it is you doing the self-study online through the Canvas platform. So this is a hybrid course because we've got the in person. It's in person, even though it's virtual. It's the in-person synchronized learning. And then you go away and on your own time, you study the online Canvas platform. So we've got this hybrid version with this course. Any questions, ladies, about today's material?
That was very interesting.
Good. And we'll move along next time to conversation activities. We do conversation activities before we do the 4 skills language teaching of languages, because the conversations are conversation activity assignments. That's listening and speaking only. The 4 skills include listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Mhm.
Mosh, yes, you have a question. Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry. My understanding of the webinars is that it comes up 3 times a week, and it's the same thing that it's a 3 times a week, or are they 3 different sessions per week? I just wanted to get clarity on that.
That's a very good question. What do you mean by 3 times a week?
No, I got an email saying the webinars on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, or something like that. So I want to be sure that it says different
Monday,
speakers.
Wednesday, and Saturday, I think.
Yes, sorry,
Mhm.
you're correct. Yes, so I want to find out, is it the same sessions led by different people, or are they 3 separate sessions per week?
Well, today being Tuesday, this is an anomaly. Normally, I would do a Monday webinar with you, right? And then there'd be a Saturday. I wasn't aware of 3 a week. I've only known about 2 a week.
Mhm.
Or maybe I'm mixing it up because I'm doing another course, but so
That-
Mondays and Saturdays, we need to have those webinars. They're different
Yes,
lessons on Monday and Saturday.
it's different material each time.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I will be here most Mondays, and Miss Elham Misagi will be with you most Saturdays. But there will be a couple of times when one of the other instructors drops in to do a session. But every webinar has different material for you.
Okay, thank you.
So the only way you'll see this webinar again or be able to review this webinar again is when you receive the link to sign up for TESOL YouTube, and
Mhm.
you can review the webinars on YouTube.
Mhm.
But this material will not be presented again to you.
In this case, I wasn't aware of these 3 sessions. Well, or 2, I don't know. I got the email to as well with saying that 3 days there will be 3 different webinars or 3 webinars. So you mentioned at the beginning attendance is considered, right? So if we can only attend to one of them, but follow the recording, would that be okay?
It is certainly, it's acceptable if you are not able to attend all of the webinars as you are today. I mean, that's highly recommended so that you have the ability to participate and ask questions and that type of thing. But if you're not able to attend the webinar, then that's not serious. You can review the recordings after the fact.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Unfortunately, I wasn't aware of that, so I have some things I try to change those things, but I know one session will be possible, but other 2 days maybe not. Mhm,
Certainly. No, I understand that.
mhm.
And that's fine. But as I say, I wasn't aware of 3 sessions a week.
Yes. Mhm.
Ah, oh, Mosh has an associate.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Kids are always welcome on the show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fine. So any other questions, ladies, about today's material?
Um, yes, I'm looking at my dashboard right now, and I'm in the calendar, and it only shows today's session. So I'm so what would you suggest is the best way to proceed? So just to follow the courses outline, that's for sure, I guess. But in our case, where we are just specifically working on one language, how to, if the time is limited, how to make sure that we are not missing any of the mandatory activities or tasks here? Is there maybe a calendar of that we can follow?
I never found that calendar to be very helpful because it didn't list most of the things that I was looking for.
No, actually, there's nothing there now. Well, only today's session.
Right. So the best thing you can do is simply follow through the Canvas modules.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a pen and a piece of paper, I can tell you right now there will be the foundation essay,
Mm-hmm.
then there will be conversation activities, then the 4 skills lesson plans, a MOOC essay, and a MOOC project. But the MOOC project is not for foundation.
Mm-hmm.
MOOC project is for advanced and TESOL.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
then you have a final research paper. And you have a midterm exam in a few weeks, and then the final board exam in December.
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially your list of assignments. And as I mentioned earlier, whenever I do a webinar about an assignment,
Mm-hmm.
and I explain it to you, we go through the details of it, you should consider the due date for that assignment to be roughly 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because this is a self-paced study course, if for some reason you cannot submit every assignment within 2 weeks, like I said before, that's not serious. You're not going to fail the course. You won't lose marks. That just simply, it might delay your progress in the course.
Yes.
And if for some reason you're not able to write the midterm exam on the date that it comes up, you can always request to write the next midterm exam.
Mm-hmm.
Now that might be a couple months later, it might not be an early new writing date,
Mhm.
but you are able to delay the completion of portions of the course. You simply send Simon Baker an email, explain your situation, and
Mhm.
ask for a bit of an extension.
Sure. Perfect. Thank
So
you.
they have no issue with extending any of these certificate levels up to a year of time frame, because they realize people have lives, people have jobs, people have families, things that take up their time. So if you do need to ask for extensions, and if for some reason you're not able to complete your certificate within the time frame that you would like to or
Mhm.
normally wanted to, you can certainly ask for an extension.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Does that help? Did that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully, it's not my intention to delay this, but it's definitely important to consider the deadlines. But if I know the
Of
deadlines,
course.
I definitely can get organized better. Hmm.
Of course.
Hmm.
And there's also, I always explain this to everybody so that it relieves the pressure, so that you don't think, if I hand the assignment in 3 days late, how many marks will I lose? You won't lose any marks,
Hmm.
right? So you don't lose marks if you hand it in a little bit late, and you don't get kicked out of the course if it's not completed in 3 or 4 months,
Hmm.
right? So those time frames of 3 to 4 months for foundation and 4 to 5 months for advanced
Hmm.
and 5 to 6 months for diploma,
Hmm.
those time frames are suggested time frames, but they're not absolute. So just keep that in mind, because this is a heavy course,
Hmm.
and the last thing you need is more stress added on top of you if you think that I've got to finish this by this day, or I'm kicked out of the course. That's not the case.
Hmm.
All right.
Yes. Perfect.
Very good. Any other questions, ladies, before we're going to end out the session in a couple minutes here? Any other questions?
It's good to know that it's more self-paced, so I can take my time.
That's
And
right.
yeah, I agree with Selena that it would be good that there is a timeline. Say by end of September, you should have done 2 modules. So I know I'm not that far behind. But now it's okay. Don't have to be too stressful.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's true. And having said that, if we look at the Canvas module, Canvas platform here, we see I'm looking for the midterm exam. There we go. Here's the midterm exam after grammar day 12. So you can see that this is designed, these grammar days are designed to be done one a day. So this part of Canvas from the beginning, from grammar day 1, grammar focus day 1, through the second language acquisition grammar days, and all of these parts, all of this material is considered to be able to be done within roughly 2 weeks. So I don't know the date of your midterm exam right now. I can't tell you that. And if we open this up, it says no due date, but there will be a date given for your exam. Oh, this is talking about it being available. Ignore these dates, because this was back in the previous session. So ignore. That's why I say don't pay close attention to the dates that you see on the Canvas platform, because they don't get updated regularly. You will be given a date for your midterm exam, and I don't know the date, as I said, but my guess is that it's probably going to be around the end of September, or early in October. So your midterm exam is probably going to be 3 to 4 weeks from now. And on the midterm exam, you will be examined on modules 1 and 2. So you definitely need to complete module 1
Mm-hmm.
and module 2
Mm-hmm.
before the midterm exam. And if you do that if you complete modules 1 and 2 within the next 3 to 4 weeks, then you should be on track with the midterm exam date. As soon as I know it,
Mm-hmm.
I will let you know when that date is. I doubt that they even have that date set yet. Okay?
Okay.
Any other questions, ladies, before we sign off?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
You're
so
very
much.
welcome. Nice to meet all of you today. Have a great
Nice to
week.
meet you too. And you.
And
You
I
too.
look forward to seeing you again next Monday. I'm going to stop the recording now.